Oh yeah.
This has come up for me in a few different cases, right? So it's like, I'm a new user and I've been going through the like new user flow over and over. Okay, I'm a new user. Cool. I'm in this minimalist Discord or whatever. I try to join a group and I can't join it. And how do you explain to someone, well, that's because that other group is on a node that's actually offline. And the fact that it's on a totally separate node is really a cool thing. It's not just a broken thing, even though it appears as broken. And so I've been thinking about like, how are the ways that you make that more just perpetually obvious to someone? So how do I understand like networking state, but even how do I understand like the fact that, yeah, this whole thing is an integer, like, and you're basically sending integers back and forth. That's so cool. So one thing what I was almost going to pose the question to you, even just like in the command line, it's like, okay, is there some way for me to actually just like, can I just walk down the tree? Can I see like, is there, how can someone start to more easily see, like, I want to be like, click on a DM and be like, show me the signatures, show me the knock, show me the, like, how do I like unearth like what's actually going on there? I don't know if that's something you feel like you can like very quickly do, but I feel like could be an amazing demo.
Yeah, there's this sense that I have when I use Urbit that I don't know how to communicate to other people very well, that I've just developed from spending a lot of time working on it, of course. Which is that basically when I think about my Urbit, I think of basically this tree of data that I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
there's your Arvo has its data, like the kernel itself, and then it has each of its veins, and then inside of Gall you have each of its apps, and inside of each of those you have a very like well-defined state at the top. And that's like very clear in my mind. And when I'm trying to figure out what's happening, I'm usually just trying to make that visible somehow, make it
Yeah, exactly.
just like print that out somehow. Um, and it like that is not how I think of like Linux, right? When something's going wrong with Linux, when my
Yeah.
graphics driver is not working or something, I'm not thinking like, well, at the top level you have this and you have all these modules, they have their own state or whatever. Like I have a different vision in my mind that like kind of matches reality, but it's much less precise.
Yeah. Yeah. This a part of this actually was prompted by the very incisive comment that my friend Dennis made a while ago, where he was like, I was showing him around landscape, and at first he was kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's cool, whatever. And I was like, well, I think we probably started talking about knock or something like that, And I was like, well, I mean, the whole thing is a state machine, and the network is decentralized. And he was like, man, you guys really need like an ether scan, because like there's no,
Right.
like, comes from Ethereum world, and he was sort of like, the whole thing about the early days of Ethereum was like the UI was pretty good, but it was the thing is that you could always like very easily just kind of crack it open and see, oh, whoa, this is actually this, relatively complex system under the hood. And that was part of what made it exciting. Part of what made it interesting is you were like reminded of the fact that there's this chain underneath, right? And that yeah, there's got to be a way to we've these things have drifted like too far afield from each other in my sense, like, I mean, I think it's important that we have really familiar UI, but you also do want to be like building an understanding for a user, or give the user the ability to like very quickly, just like open it up, like, let me see,
Right.
let me walk down the ladder, back down to like what's actually going on here.
Yeah, and
So
like
yeah, I don't know if you feel like you can.
yeah, not mine's
I was going
point
to try and
that
have you actually to do it. Like, I'm like, let's do it. Like, can we actually go find the knock of a chat message? Like, can we find the signatures? I mean, I don't know if you're like, well,
we
whatever. Yeah.
we can. It'll take a couple of minutes. Honestly, the debug app, a lot of people still don't know about the debug app, and that's got all kinds of useful stuff in it. We can take a look at that in just a second, because everybody already has that on
Sure.
their machine. Not mine's point that like even if most people don't understand what's happening in it, it does feel good to know, oh, it's just right here. And if I wanted to learn more, I would just learn more about what this is. Like it
Oh,
makes I don't
totally.
know,
Well,
it makes a huge difference for that.
I think of it as there are two like really significant like user benefits. So one of them is, many of our users are technical, and it helps them
Mhm.
understand the technology, and you should be able to connect these two things of like, here's something you can do with this technology, and then you can see mechanically what's going on. And then I think the other side of it is that for non-technical users, it gives them a better just like sense of what the system actually is and what it's doing. which also just builds better expectations. Because I think a lot of the ways, if you just say, okay, landscape is a website, okay, wait, why is it slow in this way? Why is it broken? Why is my refresh fast, but when I try and initiate a DM, it's slow? Like that just doesn't make sense. So you need to help someone understand, like, where am I? What's going on under the hood? You know, what is this thing? And anyway, I think there are really
Yeah.
material benefits. I've always wanted you. Maybe we need an app. I've always wanted an app that's just like your neighborhood. You know, like all your peers, right? So like, and then the amazing thing would be show me the peers I know, and then ideally I can open my neighborhood in one tab, and then when I initiate a DM, I can actually see the peering added to the web. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So like I try to DM a new planet. It's the reason it takes a minute is because you're going out and you're basically doing this key exchange over the network, and that key exchange may fail at some point, right? Because someone may be offline. Like if their star is offline, if you can't discover their keys, you can't talk to them, or you can't discover their IP on that first route.
Right.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. So this is what the debug app looks like. It's got a bunch of options. I think the get help button goes to. I doubt that link works, but the rest of it works.
Just sends you to Google.
It sends you to Dopsot, Urbit help. I don't know. Maybe it does work. Um, but and so like so it's got a bunch of tabs here, right? The easiest ones to see is like Bane, right? Bane is the timer Bane, and it's like, what are all the timers that are set? And this is all the timers that I have set. Most of those are Ames timers. You can see what time they're for, and you can filter
Wait,
it,
can you tell me
right?
the URL? Is it just it's /sig debug,
It's just
right?
/sig debug. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
this.
We should probably just make this an app, right? Because the problem is that no one's ever gonna find
Yeah, I
it.
mean, there's no link to it, but everybody's got it on their ships. It's in the base desk. Um,
Yeah.
and you can be like, okay, I don't care about all these Ames ones. I only care about the ETH Watcher ones because something's wrong with that. And you can be like, okay, you can see these timers are set or not set. You can look at like air and see, okay, what do I have bound? I have all these different things get bound to whatever, right? So for example, debug is probably in this list somewhere. Yeah,
There it is.
debug gets sent to the debug app itself.
Oh my god, man,
Nice.
this is like giving me like flashbacks of like writing the error URL handling.
Oh yeah, right.
Do you remember those debates about even like how, whatever, yeah, like
Oh
how
yeah,
the
it
URL
was.
paths are actually going to work? Yeah,
Yeah, and what we landed on is just bind what you want, and we'll use the most specific binding, which
yeah, it works
better
fine.
than anything we came up with, I think. And yeah, you have all your connections here. I might have to delete the VOD if I leak anything, but I don't think there's anything really important here. Actually, I have no idea if there's like cookies in there, but we'll delete the VOD if we need to.
Well, that's why this is this is ephemeral, I guess. Someone else is recording it. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it'll be on Twitch for the next like week, unless I go and delete it, and then it'll go away. Ames, you can see everyone you talk to, which for me is 2,000 people apparently, and you can be like, okay, what information do I
Okay,
have
this is
about
it.
talking with Galen? Don't worry, the DMs are not in here. And you can be like, okay, here's all the different connections that I have with him. Here's the last time I heard stuff on these different connections. It's certainly not the easiest thing to read
Dude,
and
this is
understand,
so
but
ripe for visualization though. Like
oh yeah,
it's crazy. Like you could
and this stuff
visualizing this is
is
like
right. Yeah, no, you could do so much with this, and this hasn't changed in like a year or two. Like Mark wrote this a while ago,
yeah, I
and
remember.
which also tells you that the data structures underneath are pretty stable. Um,
Yeah,
and also it's really useful. Like I use this stuff anytime someone comes in. It's like, hey, this ship can't talk to that other ship. I'm like, okay, let's fire up
yeah,
debug on both sides and like figure out what's happening. You can
yeah.
often diagnose things like a ship being booted in two different places and various things like that. Um, you can be like, yeah, what am I in the middle trying to send someone and all kinds
Wait,
of cool
so
stuff.
let me help me understand what I'm seeing right here. So okay, so this is basically the aim state between you and I. So
Yeah.
I guess you are. So is that my IP address?
Um, yes, I leaked your IP address.
It's okay. I mean, we can.
Um,
It's just
and that's
it's a
the last time our ships had any contact like that. Well, the
right.
last time that I heard something from you. which
Yeah.
if that's very different than the reverse number, than the same number on your machine, then that says, one-way connectivity. And you go down a whole nother route.
Got it. And then, but then in the, okay, so status is that, right, we have a route and that, right. And then we had recent last contact, although that must be UTC, right? Yeah.
Yeah, probably
Um,
UTC.
and then, but then here in the forward, are these things that you're, I don't know, what is that? I have no idea what this is. What's next?
Uh, so then there's lanes. I mean, I have a lot of contacts with you, so it's hard to scroll through 'em. But there's forward bones or lanes, whatever you want to call them. Not lanes. Connections basically. Flows is the word. So there's forward flows and backward flows. So forward flows are ones that formally I initiated. Um, and then there's backward ones, which are ones that formally you initiated. And then each one of those has potentially a send and receive direction that tend to be associated with each other. So this was, way back at some point, I I don't know, I tried to join a group that yeah, it looks like there was a Twitter ops group. I might leak some stuff, but that you hosted, probably I don't know, years ago. And so I tried to
Yeah.
join, and you
In
responded.
1970, apparently.
Probably happened.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's the
Um,
Unix epic, I think, right? But yeah.
yeah. That just means that we're not waiting on a timer at all right now. So I'm not trying to send something here. I said two things, or maybe that's one thing. I forget. Some of the off by ones are hard to remember. You
Yeah.
responded with one thing, and that was it. We don't use that flow anymore. And there's a bunch more.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so you're keeping, right. So a flow is basically any a path over which we were going to exchange packets, right? Which
yeah,
is gets to be initiated somewhere in user space. And you're
right,
keeping a record of every single one that ever happened.
right. Well, yes, some kind of record. Like it doesn't have the actual. We throw away the actual packets, of course, but we keep like a number. Which
Maybe the way to do this demo
for that
actually
one's
is
like
we
two.
should have
But
done
if you
this.
go to Marzod, hmm?
We should have done this from onboarding, right? So we could have gone,
Oh
just
yeah,
gone to Tondeo, let's go claim a hosted ship, open debug on that ship. All you do it, I'll do it. You know what I mean? And then whatever, then you'll see a much simpler list.
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely doable. But like here's my connections with Marzod, and you can see so Marzod is my sponsor, and you ping your sponsor every 30 seconds to keep your UDP things open. And
Yeah.
so I've pinged it a gazillion times, and you can actually multiply that by 30 seconds and get a good sense of my
How
overall
old the ship
uptime
is.
since
Dude, this is
yeah.
such a good thing this could be so cool. Like just
Yeah,
as a standalone app, right? I mean, this is part of where's Luke? I've been trying to get, or even Dan, who's been working on Vitals. Like this is what I've wanted to be able to surface. Ideally, Vitals
yeah,
and this are almost like the same thing, right? So you have like a top
right,
level view that like a naive user could look at, which actually would even be the thing that, hey, I go try and talk to a ship and it times out and it's like gives you a link that's like go check in Vitals, and like in Vitals it has like a total visualization of state of your ship, state of other ships, whatever.
right.
I mean, this you could probably link it to.
Yeah,
Even just linking to this would be a classic like Etherscan in 2018 type of thing, where it's like you don't know what the fuck it is, but at least you as a user now can go back to Urbit help and be like, hey, what's it mean when my like flow whatever.
right.
So okay, so then
This
in
is a reasonably small one because this is the moon that I just booted on my native planet box that a few days ago. And you can
nice.
see
I need to set mine up.
that's the full
Maybe
set of
that's
it. Yeah. But that's
you're still
AIMS,
looking at
which is
AIMS,
like
right?
useful stuff, right? But there's also okay, so Spider is just a list of all your active threads. These are you can't tell that much about them, but they're subscriptions to like apps that I have installed, which you can just kill and then they'll get restarted automatically. But not a ton there. But it is, if you're running threads and you want to figure out what's happening, or you're like maybe the ETH thread is running or whatever, you can see it here, kill it. But then apps is where you get the whole next level of what information can you pull out of it. Trying to think what's a good app to to look
What about
at.
like pals maybe or something like that?
Sure. So
I'm just thinking of something that might
first,
have relatively simple state.
yeah, I have to look up the state, or I believe that Paldev is in the chat and maybe could give me a query to put in here. I don't maybe even just dot my work. But so
Well, there aren't
you look
that
at the
many, at
state.
least for
We'll look at
me.
that in a second. But there's also you can see what subscriptions are happening incoming and outgoing for each app, right? So you can see that
Well,
Sphinx
so in the
uses
case of
pals, Zone
pals,
uses pals, Board uses pals, various things in Air are using
oh,
pals,
what?
Rumors using
This is
pals.
so interesting. What
Yeah,
the fuck? It's so inscrutable, but it's super interesting. Like being able to see that, see the connections between all of your running applications.
yeah,
That's insane. That's so cool.
yeah.
Uh,
What I really want here is a kick button and some other of those. But like that's also like actually pretty easy to implement. We just haven't got around to it because I don't know. Nobody's made any changes to this anytime recently. And yeah, you can look at okay, hep.hep is just going to be 0. If you just do hep, yeah, this is my list of pals. That's another leak. Um, if you want to be on this list, just send a pals request to Flick right. You'll be on the next stream. Um, and like yeah, the printing out is a little bit weird, but you can see this is the list of outgoing pals I have. This is the list of incoming pals I have. Um, I don't ever actually do comments, but they show up as as leeches, receipts, uh, saying whether I'm not precisely
so
sure what those are, but
wait,
yeah.
so if you go back to the current like incoming, so is it that anyone who has an incoming like PALS query to you would appear in that like targets list or whatever? Is that right? Like, because they're like actually
Sorry, do
actively
you do, do,
polling.
do you mean this incoming, like incoming in the state, or incoming subscriptions, like at the next level up?
I'm saying, are those two connected? So I'm like, incoming in your
Oh,
state, does someone who has an incoming request to you maintain an open subscription?
in the case of pals, no.
Okay.
I as I understand it, they just you just send pokes to each other, um, to maintain that. And what these subscriptions are all apps that use pals, right? Like Slam uses pals, so that you can
Yeah.
see a leaderboard of who's done the best at that game. Um, there are some Air ones. I believe that Groups uses pals for stuff now, and so that's probably where those are coming from because I have it open like
Oh, okay.
on my
Yeah. That's
phone
what
or
I
on my
was asking. That's
desktop,
what I thought maybe it was. Yeah.
and then yeah, each of these apps has one or two subscriptions. Like for example, Face has two subscriptions because it cares about both directions, whereas like Rumors, well, yeah, Rumors also subscribes to both. I don't know how it uses them separately, but yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. It's interesting that so yeah, so then the way that that state is exchanged, someone sends you a PALS request, like you act that the request is received, and then once you take action on a request, it goes back. So it's not like an open poll on your state update. That's my guess.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
So the reason that there aren't open subscriptions here for PALS requests is because the way that the state
Right.
update works is that someone sends the request to be your pal, and that is stored in your state. And when you acknowledge that it is stored, it doesn't keep a subscription open. It just
Right.
says, okay, cool. Well, let me know when you decide to be my pal.
Right. It like pals only does the level of like, okay, are we pals, are we not pals? It doesn't sync any information from them, right? If you have something like a
Yeah.
contacts app, and like so for example, Whom uses pals, and I think it uses it in a sort of live way, and Whom itself um will
Yeah.
like keep open subscriptions, I believe, because it's watching for updates when you change your any information, your nickname or whatever. Then it
Yeah.
wants to hear about that, but Pals doesn't happen to do that. And it's cool that you can just go into this and see from this distance without looking at the Pals code at all that it must kind of work that way.